I've talked a lot about the complexities of many different characters from Beastars, but something I realized is that I never made an updated overview on my thoughts on the series as a whole and why I find it so special. Well, I think it's time I do that. With Beastars Season 2 now being on Netflix in the West, so many people are watching the series again, and even more are considering checking it out, and for that reason, I'm gonna keep this video relatively spoiler-free. I wanted to share what makes Beastars so special, and if you're on the fence about it, why you should consider watching it. And totally not because I just need a little bit more time on the Ibuki video, so I'm making a small little video to still give you guys something while I just work a little bit longer on it. Yeah. This isn't really a why you should watch video, and more of why I personally resonate with Beastars / dissecting the writing style of the series as a whole. But if you want to interpret the video as the former, that's not a bad idea. Anyway, since I don't need to put a spoiler warning this time around, we can get right into it. Here's what, in my opinion, makes Beastars so special.
Sounds nice and simple. You know, you could just call the police. Wow. Your arrogance is really shining through.
I'm just trying to follow your moral code that you told me about.
There are a lot of videos already out there highlighting the strengths of the series, but I wanted to input through my perspective on what I find to be the greatest strength of the series that causes so many people to resonate with it so much. It is the extremely unique style of Paru Itagaki's character writing, and how the open-ended nature of the deep and complex character writing could cause one to relate to some of the characters very deeply. Even though I couldn't quite describe it correctly in my original video, I feel that now after all this time, I could finally pinpoint exactly what makes it so enticing. The structure and characters of Beastars are written in a way that's similar to real life. There are little to no character tropes, with one exception later on. And the way that Paru writes her characters is that she takes a simple personality trait and a character struggle as the base, then branches everything else off from there, leading to a complex web of traits that make each of the main characters resemble the complexity that a real person would have. Each of the characters have things that they're confident about, they have their insecurities, and all these complex characters with their own viewpoints and struggles play off or deflect against each other, and it's really interesting to watch. Legoshi and Louis have completely different mindsets from each other, and in the early stages of the series, before they really learn how to understand each other, their viewpoints and interpretations of each other are heavily different from who they actually are. But what works is that we know why they view each other in ways that they do because their mindsets and interpretations root directly back to their base personality trait and struggle at the stem of their characters. Louis' base trait is wanting to be a strong leader, but his base struggle is that he feels that he was born with a lack of strength to do so. That leads to a branching off into him respecting carnivores for their strength. But he's also jealous of the fact that he doesn't have that strength, so that completely covers his admiration and turns it into a disdain for carnivores. That disdain becomes so overwhelming for him that he completely forgets that the root of all of this is that he actually admires the strength that carnivores have. What Louis himself doesn't even realize is that he's secretly in awe of the fact that Legoshi and carnivores in general have this strength. But because a deeper layer of his character masks that, he ends up showing resentment towards all carnivores out of a deeply rooted envy for them.
There is something I've been wanting to ask you. Why don't you even acknowledge the existence of your own strength?
Louis is just an example I cited for how the main characters of Beastars are written. He's not the only one. Every single character has this complex web of thoughts and emotions, and because of that, no two character relationships feel the same. Each of these characters have their own world that they live in, with people they perceive by terms that are true to the deep roots of their characters. But want to know the catch to all this? When the characters display deeper sides of their personalities, there's somewhat an open-ended way to interpret them. In life, we can never truly know what someone is thinking. So that's why when the characters have a catharsis, Paru tends to keep them somewhat ambiguous because we as people aren't always the most direct. Emotions are so complex, and you know how sometimes you're feeling a really deep emotion and you can't find the most accurate way to describe them with words? So instead you find the best words that are not quite describing of it, but kind of build a bigger picture when put all together to really actually describe what you're trying to say? Well, the writing in Beastars is kind of like that. Instead of the characters flat out telling the viewers how they feel, they give context clues about the way they think and feel that help the viewers piece together the best they can what the conclusion the characters are coming coming to. That is the key to why Beastars is so personable and resonates with so many people. The reason why I make all these Beastars videos is because I love piecing together the different aspects of these characters and presenting their stories in a more clear picture. A lot of times when I'm rereading different parts of Beastars to get a better gauge of the character I'm making a video about, I find a new aspect to a character that I had never even fully realized from the previous read-throughs. Paru lays out so many different traits for so many of the different characters throughout the story that no matter how many times you read or watch through the series, you're always going to discover something new about a character that you never knew before. A good example of this was when I was making the Bill video last year. At that point, I had read through Beastars around 3 or so times, and I thought that I knew everything there was to know about Bill. When I was doing research for that video, I reread all of Bill's chapters and tried to look through Bill's perspective on things, and from doing that, I found out so many more things about his character that I didn't even realize the first couple read-throughs. Even though Bill is a very flawed individual and makes a lot of mistakes, I really never noticed that he had a subtle strive to be a leader that could create peaceful coexistence. Sure, it was always there, but it took a lot more digging and putting together his subtle actions and monologues to realize this whole other side of him that the readers only barely see at face value. This has happened too many times when I'm reading through the story again to do more research on characters for my videos. There are so many subtle details hidden beneath the surface of all of these characters that's all up to the reader to figure out and interpret in any way that they like.
Well, I probably shouldn't be visiting you either. Sorry.
I feel like this is something about Beastars that not enough people talk about. The subtle open-endedness that the characters have and how their thoughts and arcs could be interpreted in multiple ways. What I'm trying to say is that Paru is an expert at show don't tell. This is why I love Beastars so much. There is something for everyone. Seeing the problems that these characters face and the ways that they react to them, listening to their inner monologues, and viewing their doubts, desires, woes, their happiness. There is so much to uncover about these characters, and if you take a closer look into them, there is so much more to them than what they show at the surface. There's so much more that is up to you to infer about what these characters do and say. We are not just flat out told everything about the characters, and because we're only shown it, there's so much room for interpretation on the reader's end, and it makes the experience with those characters that much more personal. The reason why I believe that makes the person's experience more personal with the character is because from what I've seen from fans of the series, usually the ways they fill in the gaps for what's not told reflects how they personally resonated with the struggles of that character. Going back to the example of Louis, while there are a lot of people out there who relate to Legosi, there is also just as large of a crowd who also relates to Louis. As I stated before, Louis' struggle is that he wishes that he had the strength of carnivores. He indirectly expresses that with his outward actions towards the carnivores around him and his internal monologues. He hates that he was born weak as he sees himself. There are many ways to interpret his arc, and trust me, I've seen many interpretations. Louis is one of the characters in Beastars where I could confidently say that there is really something for everyone with him. One could take his arc as a person trying to deal with a part of themselves that they feel weighs them down. Another person could take his story as someone who does not feel comfortable in their own skin. I personally take it as, and resonate with the idea that, Louis' arc is about a guy who is a perfectionist and has to learn to accept every part of himself, even the ones that he doesn't like. While Paru wrote Louis' arc to be pretty concrete, there's still room for interpretation on some of the inner workings of Louis' character that causes one to be able to fill in the gaps in a way that they could personally relate to, and that's a really cool and interesting way to write a character.
Please tell me what happened, Louis. Please.
Everything that irritated me about him came back all at once. He'll always taunt me with his brute strength.
I'll give another example now. I'm going to talk about a character who hasn't appeared in the anime yet. I'm so glad I could say yet and not never because season 3 was just confirmed. Let's go. So I want to put a spoiler warning for this section of the video. This will have spoilers for season 3 of Beastars, and if you don't want to hear it, then you could skip to the next section of the video after this next one. Anyway, my favorite character in Beastars is Yafia. If I were to say only what we were flat out told about him, he's a fearsome man who has a disdain for carnivores. 36 years ago, he was good friends with a man named Gosha, and then he left Yafia's side, which caused Yafia to become very distraught over it. Those unsettled feelings festered for decades, and now Yafia has a burning hatred for Gosha. But when you look into all of Yafia's personality traits, and when you see his inner monologue in a couple chapters, it gives us so much more context into his character on why Yafia really feels the emotions that he does. Now, what I love is that the meaning of those emotions and thoughts are all up to interpretation. Some people could interpret that Yafia hates carnivores because he once had a carnivore friend that left him. I personally interpret that Yafia has a hatred of carnivores because he was constantly fighting bad carnivores, and Gosha, the only good carnivore in his life, left him, and Yafia no longer had that person in his life that taught him how to have a balanced view of carnivores. It could be either one, or even a third option, but what I love is that there are so many different ways of looking at it due to how great Paru is at show don't tell. Another thing about Yafia that could be interpreted from context clues is his sexuality. Yafia is very obsessed with Gosha, and when Gosha told him that he was leaving, Yafia treated it as if his heart was broken. Sure, it was the fact that Gosha was stepping down as his partner, but also, Yafia also seemed very distressed that Gosha was settling down with somebody and having a kid with them. Because of this, and more if you watch my Yafia video, I interpret that Yafia's gay. By seeing his story that way, it changes so much about the context of his story. I interpret Yafia's character struggle of not being able to move on from a past love even more relatable to me as someone who's gay. But that's just one way to interpret Yafia's story though. Others could see Yafia as straight, and it's more that he felt betrayed by a close friend and he can't let go of that. Honestly, it's all up to you. But that's what's so amazing about Beastars, because there's so much room for your own interpretation of these characters' stories. And because of that, you could find even more to relate to with these characters. Alright, the non-spoiler people should be back now. Anyway, to wrap up, the three main factors of Beastars writing that make the series so special are the lack of tropes, and instead the characters having deeply rooted complex personalities. There being many aspects to this characters that you might miss the first time around and could discover way more of if you want to look deeper into them. And lastly, the open-ended show-don't-tell writing of cathartic moments that give the viewer room for interpretation that helps them resonate and relate with a character more. If you have not checked Beastars out yet, I seriously recommend you do, because Beastars really is something special.
Now that my fur is back, people are gonna recognize me. I don't want to get rid of it again. Huh?
Guess we have no choice.
Huh?
See you guys again soon for the Ibuki video. Trust me, it's gonna be a big one. Also, check out the 2 special guest VAs from Otter Project and Project Cherryton. And thank you to Blythe for being a real one as always. Anyway, see you guys at the Ibuki video.